Hey guys, I'm sorry about the last video that the sound didn't work, but those of you who showed up for the live meeting seem to either have read it or to already know the story anyway, so it's fine. Today, we're going to read two separate stories, and it's only about 5 pages, and they're both going to focus on some of the monsters in the Odyssey. The first are the Sirens, which again we've talked about briefly, and you've probably heard about before. Think about any cartoon or story where you have these women at sea who are singing and luring sailors in. They're often portrayed as mermaids. Those are the sirens. In classic myth, sirens were half woman, half bird, and they would sing and entrance sailors, and they would come and they would die on the rocks, or the sirens would pick them up and kill them. So they're not exactly nice ladies, but we're going to read a little bit more about them. So the sirens. Odysseus returns to Circe's island. The goddess reveals his course to him and gives advice on how to avoid the dangers he will face. The sirens, who lure sailors to their destruction, the wandering rocks, sea rocks that destroy even birds in flight, the perils of the sea monster Scylla, and nearby the whirlpool Charybdis, and the cattle of the sun god, which Tiresias has warned Odysseus not to harm. So this is kind of a summary of what we read in Land of the Dead. And a lot of that also was condensed, so you have to keep that in mind. But these are some of the dangers he's going to face on that journey home. And it's a long journey, right? He's going to be gone for a total of 20 years, so keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and jump into reading the Sirens. As Circe spoke, Dawn mounted her golden throne. First of all, here's Dawn again as a character. In the Cyclops story, it was Dawn with her fingertips of rose, I think. I can't remember, but it's a character. Now she's sitting on a golden throne. And on the first rays, Circe left me, taking her way like a great goddess up the island. I made straight for the ship, roused up the men to get aboard, and cast off at the stern. They scrambled to their places by the rowlocks, and all in line dipped oars in the gray sea. But soon an offshore breeze blew to our liking, meaning it's helping them out here. A canvas-bellying breeze, that's the second time that's been used, and the reason this kind of language was probably reused, just as a little side note, is that originally the Odyssey was told in the oral tradition, so when it was written down, they probably tried to maintain as much of that repetition as they could, because if you repeat things, you don't have to worry about remembering new phrases, right? So Dawn is mentioned a lot as a character as kind of like a stopping point for the speaker or the storyteller to say, okay, what is Dawn doing now? Or here, a canvas bellying breeze, that's a really vivid image, but they don't think of new language each time. Okay, back to it. A canvas bellying breeze, a lusty shipmate sent by the singing nymph with sunbright hair. Who is this? This is Circe. This is how she was referenced in the last section too. So we made fast the braces and we rested, letting the wind and steersman work the ship. The crew being now silent before me, I addressed them, sore at heart. Now, if you're not planning to come to the live session, this is where you'll answer your first question. It's circled with the number 1. Keep an eye out for those. Dear friends, more than one man or two should know those things Circe foresaw for us and shared with me. So let me tell her forecast. Then we die with our eyes open, if we are going to die, or know what death we baffle if we can. So here, he is talking about, hey, Circe she told me the future. Well, I guess Tiresias told him the future, but I know the future, and we all should know it, right? I'm going to share it with everyone so that way we all are going into this with our eyes open. Sirens weaving a haunting song over the sea, we are to shun. Shun means to turn away from, to ignore, to close our eyes to. We're going to ignore them, she said. And their green shore all sweet with clover. Yet she urged that I alone should listen to their song. Therefore, you are to tie me up, tight as a splint, erect along the mast, lashed to the mast, and if I shout and beg to be untied, take more turns of the rope to muffle me. So, while they're going by the sirens, Odysseus is going to be tied to the ship's mast so that he can hear it but won't be tempted to turn the ship there, right? Because if he's tied up, his men are going to have their ears plugged, and we're going to see that. So just, I want you to be thinking about this, and if you're going to come to the live session, we'll talk about it. Why? What could be the purpose of him having to listen to this siren song when if he just plugged his ears, like they could all just go by without ever having heard it? Okay, here we are. I rather dwelt on this part of the forecast while our good ship made time, bound outward down the wind for the strange island of Sirens. Then all at once the wind fell, and a calm came over the sea, and though some power lulled the swell, the crew were on their feet briskly to furl the sail and stow it. Then, each in place, they poised the smooth oar blades and sent the white foam scudding by. So also, another side note, be thinking about why would he talk about the mechanics of sailing so much? What purpose could that serve in the time period? Because keep in mind, this is an ancient text. So what purpose would it serve for him to be talking about the mechanics of sailing, of what happens when the wind falls or the wind grows, etc.? I carved a massive cake of beeswax into bits and rolled them in my hands until they softened. No long task, for a burning heat came down from Helios, lord of high noon. Going forward, I carried wax along the line and laid it thick on their ears. So he's going to each ship, or each person on the ship, and here's their little ear, and he's shoving beeswax in it, okay? Like earplugs. It's DIY earplugs. They tied me up then, plumb amidst, back to the mast, lashed to the mast, and took themselves again to rowing. Soon, as we came smartly within hailing distance, the two sirens, noting our fast ship off their point, made ready, and they sang. So imagine this ship. Let's see if I can do one of my excellent drawings that you guys probably screenshot and frame. Here's the mast, here's the sail, here are all the people with the beeswax in their ears. And then here's Odysseus just hanging out. He's all tied up, and he's listening. His ears are open. He's listening to the siren song, okay? Yeah, you don't have to comment and say how great their drawing is. You can just, text me if you really want to compliment it, because it's really good. Also, here's question 2. So here's the song that they sang. This way, oh, turn your bows, Achaea's glory, as all the world allows, moor and be merry. Sweet coupled airs we sing, no lonely seafarer holds clear of entering our green mirror. Pleased by each purling note, like honey twining from her throat and my throat, who lies a pining, sea rovers here take joy, voyaging onward, as from our song of Troy, gray beard and rower boy goeth more learned. All feats on that great field in the long warfare, dark days the bright gods willed, wounds you bore there. Argus's old soldiery, on Troy beach teeming, charmed out of time we see, no life on earth can be hid from our dreaming. So what is this song saying? Okay, they're singing. So this way, oh, turn your, I said bows, it should have been bows. Oh, turn your bows. So, hey, come over here, come to us, Achaea's glory. They're buttering up the sailors. As all the world allows, more, dock your ship and be happy. So like, hey, glorious soldiers, come over here and be happy. Sweet coupled airs we sing, no lonely seafarer holds clear of entering our green mirror. Like, we sing so pretty, there's no lonely seafarer that turns away from us. Pleased by each purling note, like honey twining from her throat and my throat, who lies a pining. So honey is coming from our throats and my sister's throat. And you're going to be so pleased. How are you going to pine away and be sad? If you come to us, you'll be happy, which is a lie. Sea rovers here take joy, voyaging onward, as from our song of Troy, graybeard and rower boy goeth more learned. So, hey, seafarers, come here, take joy, you'll be happy. And as you go on, whether you're old or young, you're going to be so happy. First of all, they're lying. Moving on. All feats on that great field in the long warfare, dark days the bright gods willed, wounds you bore there. So all feats on that great field, they're saying, you did great things on the battlefield. in that 10-year war, all of this, the wounds you bore there, the dark days, the gods made it so, not us. Argus's old soldiery, and this says over here, if you look in the footnotes, soldiers from Argus, which is a city in ancient Greece, on Troy Beach teeming, charmed out of time we see. So all of the soldiers from here, they were charmed out of time, they were killed. No life on earth can be hid from our dreaming. So it's like we can see everything, which is a little bit ominous and creepy. Keep in mind, these are half birds, half women who kill sailors. That's their job. And here we have question 3 if you're doing this on paper. The lovely voices sang in ardor. Let's go to our vocabulary builder. Passion or enthusiasm. So they sang really enthusiastically. Appealing over the water made me crave to listen. And I tried to say, this is Odysseus, whose ears are unplugged, untie me to the crew, jerking my brows. But they bent steady to the oars. Then Perimedes got to his feet, he and Eurylochus, and passed more line about to hold me still. So here are his men who are faithful and loyal to him, tying him up more securely. So all rowed on until the sirens dropped under the sea rim and their singing dwindled away. So basically, like as you're sailing, the horizon line gets further and further away. They rowed until the sirens were well past the horizon line and they could no longer hear them. My faithful company rested on their oars now, peeling off the wax that I had laid thick on their ears, then set me free. My faithful company. We've talked a lot about how Odysseus is faithful to his men. He cares about his men. He's loyal. And his men are the same way toward him, right? They've both the group of men and Odysseus have made mistakes so far, but overall, they're a very tight-knit, close group that care about each other, and this is one of those little nods to that. Okay, let's move on to the next story, Scylla and Charybdis. Okay, so our first monsters were half bird, half women, sirens that sing and lure sailors to their death. Our next set of monsters kind of go hand in hand, and it's one of the sadder parts, but it's one of the more exciting parts, which is probably why it's included in our textbook. So Scylla and Charybdis. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you who they are, just so you know. Scylla is a 6-headed monster that lives up in the in the caves in the ocean. Like there's a big rock wall, and she lives there. And then Charybdis is a whirlpool, and I don't even think it ever calls it a whirlpool monster, but I do. It's a giant whirlpool that draws ships in and eats it. And a lot of the artwork you'll find, it has teeth, which is really gross and cool. Okay, so Scylla and Charybdis. But scarcely had that island, the Siren Island, faded in blue air than I saw smoke and white water with sound of waves in tumult. So it's choppy, scary, angry water. Okay? A sound the men heard, and it terrified them. Oars flew from their hands. The blades went knocking wild alongside till the ship lost way. So the men panic, drop their oars, and the ship's all over the place, with no oar blades to drive her through the water. Well, I walked up and down from bow to stern, trying to put heart into them, standing over every oarsman, saying gently, "Friends, have we never been in danger before this? More fearsome is it now than when the Cyclops penned us in his cave? What power he had! Did I not keep my nerve and use my wits to find a way out for us? Now I say, by hook or crook, this peril too shall be something that we remember. Heads up, lads. We must obey the orders as I give them. Get the oar shafts in your hands and lay back hard on your benches. Hit these breaking seas. Zeus help us pull away before we founder. You at the tiller, listen and take in all that I say. The rudders are your duty. Keep her out of the combers and the smoke," which if you look over here is the large waves that break on the beach. So those big waves that lift up and crash and splatter. Keep us away from that. Steer for that headland. Watch the drift, or we fetch up in the smother and you drown us. So here, question number 4, for those of you answering on paper, and we'll probably talk about it in our live session this evening. What parts of Odysseus' speech demonstrate his strength as a leader? So this speech right here. What about this is showing his leadership qualities? It's fairly clear that he's motivating his men, but give specifics. Specifically, what is he doing to show that he's a strong leader, and how is he motivating his men? So he's just warned them, hey, do this or we're all going to drown, so don't do that. That was all, and it brought them around to action. But as I sent them on towards Scylla, six-headed monster, I told them nothing, as they could do nothing. So he knows about Scylla, okay? But he doesn't tell them about Scylla. He doesn't tell them there's a six-headed, I like to imagine her as like a dragon monster waiting in the rocks. They would have dropped their oars again in panic to roll for cover under the decking. Circe's bidding against arms had slipped my mind, so I tied on my cuirass, which is armor for the upper body, and took up 2 heavy spears, then made my way along to the foredeck, thinking to see her first from there, the monster of the gray rock, harboring torment for my friends, because he knows, without a doubt, Scylla will kill 6 men. Okay? That's just how it works. So she's going to kill 6 men no matter what. And this, him putting on his armor and going there, is his vain attempt to try and save at least 1 or 2 of them. Okay? I strained my eyes upon the cliffside, veiled in cloud, but nowhere could I catch sight of her. So he knows 6 men are going to die. He's not telling them, because what good would that do, right? They have to go this way. There's no other path to take. They have to go this way, and telling them would just cause them to panic more. But even though he knows that, and even though he's been told, you cannot save them, Odysseus, for all of his many flaws, is up there at the very front, hoping to beat her back with his sword, hoping to save some or all of his men. And all this time, in travail, which means very hard work, sobbing, gaining on the current, we rowed into the strait, Scylla to port, and on our starboard beam, Charybdis. So port and starboard, I honestly don't know which direction those are, but it's like right and left of the ship, okay? Dire gorge, if you look over here, gorge means throat, so dire throat, deadly throat of the salt sea tide. By heaven, when she vomited, all the sea was like a cauldron seething over intense fire when the mixture suddenly heaves and rises. So imagine that she's this giant whirlpool, okay, in the ocean. And she's sucking in all this water and ships and stuff. And then every now and again, all of the, it has to come back up, or it has to have like a reverse tide. So like boiling water spews out, okay? Disgusting, but also, terrifying and kind of cool. The shot spume soared to the landside heights and fell like rain. But when she swallowed the seawater down, we saw the funnel of the maelstrom, or the large violent whirlpool. Heard the rock bellowing all around, and dark sand raged on the bottom far below. So they can see into her, the bottom of the whirlpool, the bottom of her belly. My men all blanched, imagine getting really pale and like kind of sick. Against the gloom, our eyes were fixed upon that yawning mouth in fear of being devoured. So there's a movie version of this that's older. They almost get swallowed by the whirlpool. And I think in Percy Jackson, I think Charybdis is featured, but I can't remember. In this, they don't. They just see it and they're avoiding it. So while they're focusing in, they're looking at Charybdis, the whirlpool. Then Scylla made her strike, whisking 6 of my best men from the ship. And if you'll notice, he always says my best men. And that could either mean that he thinks they're all his best men, or in the retelling, he's trying to sing their praises. I happened to glance aft at ship and oarsmen and caught sight of their arms and legs dangling high overhead. Voices came down to me in anguish, calling my name for the last time. So he doesn't even see Scylla. We never see her. So I imagine her as a 6-headed dragon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here are her heads. There's my dragon for you. Fairy dragon, potato monster. But he sees their arms and legs dangling and hears them crying for help. A man surf casting on a point of rock for bass or mackerel, whipping his long rod to drop the sinker and the bait far out, will hook a fish and rip it from the surface to dangle wriggling through the air. So these were borne aloft in spasms toward the cliff. So he's comparing this to seeing someone with like a worm on a hook, throwing it into the ocean, and how the worm and the hook wiggle. And he's saying that's what these men look like, which is pretty graphic and sad. She ate them as they shrieked there in her den in the dire grapple, reaching still for me, and deathly pity ran through me at that sight. Far the worst I have suffered, questing the passes on the strange sea. So, why do you think this is the far the worst? Because he's lost dozens and dozens and dozens of men at this point, right? He lost 6 from every boat on the island of the Cicones. With the Cyclops, he lost either 4 or 6 men. With the Laestrygonians, am I saying that right? Laestrygonians, I don't ever know how to say it. He lost all of his boats except 1. And then he's lost other men here and there. Why is this 6th the worst he's ever suffered? What possibly could make that? Could it be that he knew it was going to happen and he chose to go this way anyway? Or could it be that these were his closest friends? I'll let you guys decide. We rode on. The rocks were now behind, Charybdis too, and Scylla dropped astern. So they've made it through. Okay, they made it through the monsters. And you'd think, oh, that's the worst thing that's going to happen. It's not. We're going to keep going on Monday. So if you're reading this at home, here's your last question. What quality of heroic leadership does Odysseus show in lines 8:23 through 25? So that would be these lines right here. If not, we're going to meet at 2. We're going to discuss it. These are some of my favorite passages just because you get to really see them in action against inhuman enemies, which kind of plays up the epic and the epic hero, the aspects of it that are less day to day. Like if they're just fighting other people, it's less epic in that term of like larger than life. So I really like these. If you have questions, you can text me, you can email me, you can join us at 2. We're having a lot of fun in our discussions. You can join us at 2 to talk and put ridiculous things in the chat, which you guys will do every time. And it's a really great insight into your little brains. It makes me know that in class what you're talking about, and it's highly disturbing in a really funny way.